Welcome to the Chief Optimisation Officers podcast. You're going to love this episode because we break down what optimization actually means and talk about some fun examples about big businesses and beyond who have optimized, and go down we'll go off on a few tangents and down a few rabbit holes about optimization.
Vicky, what is optimization? Said as naturally as possible.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Sam Jackson. I'm very keen to answer this question because I think this is the pin that holds a lot of what this show is all about together. Because if we can talk about what business optimization is and why it's important, then people who are listening to this can understand what we're trying to offer here and what we will be offering in future shows, essentially.
Do we want to give the dictionary definition of optimization? And also, because we're British, it's spelled with an S, not a Z, right? No, it's spelled with a Z.
I was just about to say, just based on what we were saying about the Americanization of phrases and everything like that, right, is I feel like, let's be really clear, right? Optimization for us is optimisation, not zation. And optimization, the dictionary definition, let's have a look here, is to make the best or most effective use of a situation or resource.
That sounds really boring, but it's not.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not, right? I personally believe that business optimization is about figuring out what's working and what isn't working in your business. So it can help you make better decisions about how to go forward and what to do with your business. No business can stay the same doing what it's doing year on year. Not really. Even the ones that you look at and you think, well, they've been doing the same thing years and years, like McDonald's. They haven't. They've optimized internally. They've changed with the times. They've updated internal policies, the way they work, the purchasing decisions they make, all of this based on the times that they're in, based on the people who are working there. So that there's always movement in a business, always movement. Well, if you can get and have the most accurate to-date data about what's going on in your business, it can help you make decisions better about the way forward for it, right? So part of optimization is knowing what your figures are meant to be, like what's the target for them, like key performance indicators, KPIs, right, is like one way of describing it. But more, to boil that down, it's like what numbers matter in your business, right? Because you could be bringing in 10 million turnover a year, but only making £1,000 profit. Right. So like understanding actually for us as a business, profit matters more than turnover. Like that's essentially the kind of meaning behind setting a KPI there. And then another part of optimization I feel is the process of setting goals that you can work towards. Right. That sounds really dry when you put it that way, right? But the way I like to think of it in a more kind of agile, nimble fashion here on Vicky Jake's Island, where I do what I want when I want, right, is setting mini tests to see if something's going to work in my business or not, right? And to see, hey, if I do this thing in my business, if I do this thing with my process, if I do this thing with my team, if I do this thing with my marketing, could it improve the KPI that I set myself? Right. And if you are naturally curious, if you're naturally interested in trying different things in testing, then you're only going to progress forward, which is great. But before we go off on this journey of like, hey, I've got data, I can read my data, I've set goals, I'm going to then do the things that the outcomes of my tests tell me, is actually being aware about whether you should be doing this all in the first place, right?
Definitely.
If the test that you're running matters, right? Because right now, like for many businesses, you could be doing tests to see if TikTok's going to work for you, but you're selling, funeral plans or something, like understanding, like, is that test even going to be worth it?
Don't know. Is anyone selling funeral plans on TikTok? If they are, I want to follow them. I'm curious.
Not that I've seen yet. Hey, 18 to 25-year-old TikTok user, Have you thought about preparing for your death? Like, I can't.
Well, actually, wasn't there like a campaign of all those famous guys that were like mostly budding sports personalities that were like, I'm trying, what was it called? Dead serious, dead good. It was something like punny, dead. Might have been life insurance actually.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I think there was a life insurance company who had done a campaign that was, I think, even though it was aimed definitely at
Dead
middle-aged
happy.
people, dead happy, yeah. But definitely not the TikTok demographic of 18 to 24 there.
No, you're not thinking about dying. You're thinking about how much you can drink and not die, or maybe how you feel like you've died after you've drunk. Or actually, kids don't have fun anymore, do they? They're not big into drinking the same as we were.
No, I was about to say I don't know what kids you're talking about because the ones I know all go home and do knitting or make crochet for TikTok now.
They do, yeah. All the fun's gone.
So the point of optimization essentially is to move your business forward, right? But we need to keep coming back to this one point again and again when we're talking about it, I think, which is everyone's businesses are different in terms of the KPIs they're going to set, right? For some, optimizing their business is going to improve revenue. Ultimately, right, that should be, from a kind of broad brush approach, that should be what everyone's working towards. But for some, that's not going to matter as such. It might be improving the culture or changing the world. It's not necessarily like revenue focused, right? We need to keep coming back to that because the plumber in Brighton and his goals are going to be really different from the goals that, a big SaaS software company are going to be running, right?
Can I dive in? Because I have a strong view on this, and I think we agree, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like, I definitely reckon we want to get into like the bits and bytes. Like, how do you optimize? What is optimization? Like, these are fundamental questions we definitely want to answer. But I think what we said last week was who are we trying to talk to? Because if you're talking to someone that runs a multi-million-pound, billion-pound company with a lot of moving parts, they absolutely want to figure out, what process is going on that it takes forever. So, a shitty version, a non-optimized company, you're just paying these salaries for people to sit around for 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and you don't really know what they're doing. You know that they're doing stuff, and you absolutely know it's costing you money, but you don't know specifically what they're doing and how to optimize it. But a really good version is like how Duolingo operate. Like, they put teams in charge of metrics, for instance, average playtime. And they say, okay, well, an optimization for that team is I want to see average playtime increase. So you have the fixed cost, which is known, like how much time people are spending, and you can directly correlate that with, well, how much extra playtime, which correlates with revenue, am I getting? Like, in a big company, that's how you do it. If you're in a small company where you're painting walls for a living, it's like, can I park my van next to the place where I'm doing the job and get the paint up? Cool. And I feel like we're kind of somewhere in the middle. And I think the question ultimately, what we're trying to what we're trying to define here is, what is the thing we are optimizing for? Like, what's the metric? What's on the X and the Y in the graph? And in my head, like, the people we're talking to are people like us that are looking to do the 7-8 figures in their business. They're trying to go from hundreds of thousands of pounds with, that level of complexity. And I don't want to say scale it because I'm not sure that's true, but get more revenue out of it, definitely. And I think this is just my opinion, and why I get a bit turned on by optimization is ultimately we're talking about that trade of time for money. And that's what we're trying to optimize. Like, I want to 4-Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss, like the OG book that I think absolutely should be read. And yeah, okay, it's got its criticisms, and there are things out that are in there that are out of date and whatever, but it was like 10, 15 years ahead of its time, in my view. That's what he was going for. He knew 4 hours work week, which is typically 10, 20 times that. Like, that's awesome. People are going to want that. And that is the thing. Like, how do I put, for every hour of unit of time I'm putting in, what money am I getting out? And sure, that results in other things like financial stability and freedom, whatever the hell that is, we can discuss that, and fulfillment. But for me, for our audience, I think that's ultimately what we're talking about. And that will result in, we want to analyze the data and the bits and the bytes of like how the business functions and which businesses make sense. And there are a million factors that, you may want to optimize your time and money, but fact of the matter is, if you can't pay the bills, can't put food on the table, which is a very real situation for a lot of people in the UK and Europe and the world over 2022, 2023, like you can really give a shit if you're optimized or not. You're like, I just need to pay the, £1,000 energy bill, or whatever the average is going to be, £2,500, £3,500. I don't know, an obscene amount of money. Like,
well, in your house,
no, I've disconnected the gas and the electric. We will be using blank. No, but seriously, what's the average salary in the UK? Is what, like 18 grand? I don't know. I'm out of touch now.
I think it's in the 20s. Yeah.
Okay, and minimum wage is way, way, way below that. Minimum wage is what, like $9.50 an hour, and the average energy bill is going to be $3,500. At that point, optimization sounds great, but if you've got bills to pay, like, you've just got to get the cogs turning. Like, so I think, sorry, like, you've triggered me, and I know you wanted like to.
Well, okay. Well, we are on the same page about this, right? Because I do believe, right, optimization is the best thing since sliced bread. I think we should all do a bit of navel gazing in our business and see where we can, and turn the knobs, turn the dials, and look at the kind of micro parts of our business to make the macro work in general, right? However, having done this for quite a few years, I have seen, companies have an over dependence on the data in their business and be led purely by the data and not look at the human factor, not look at the non-measurable factors in their business, have been slaves to the software in the business that looks at optimization and not looked at the fact that sometimes software is wrong. Sometimes, there are margins of error, right? And probably been too focused on that side of things rather than the bigger picture. And I want to say, I think, and this is, a snapshot, it's my opinion, it's how I feel about this, right? But I feel like Brexit is a great example of that, right? Where we looked on paper at the numbers, the stats, economists were, in the kind of argument for leaving the EU, were saying, the EU regulation will slow economy growth, that we can't do radical reform and move quick enough, that immigration will impact on the economy, that we're paying this fee that we shouldn't be paying to you every year. And on paper, if you were looking at it with an optimization hat on, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, we should be like getting rid of all of these things and changing business. But actually what's happened on the other side of that, and this is with my pub economist hat on, right, is that expats clearly are struggling to live overseas without having to pay extra costs. Same with businesses based in the UK doing business with EU and overseas as well. And the lack of immigration has led to skills shortages. So businesses need to invest more to do more training, and that's not happening quick enough. And there hasn't been this extra money that we were paying the EU to like invest in services internally because, we had a pandemic, which just drained everything, right? So, there was so much focus on the numbers, on the paper there, amongst a bunch of other things that we won't discuss, right? And actually, if, they just looked up and looked around and looked at the people and how people feel, and how people would have reacted, and how influence happens, like all these other kind of like non-measurable factors, then, perhaps there wouldn't have been such a big reliance on just pure data-led optimization.
Definitely. Well, right. So I actually don't think that they did optimize. Whoever the hell they are, didn't optimize based on the data. I think they had some data. So let's circle back to what is optimization, and then we can definitely use the Brexit, the UK leaving the EU as a case study. Regardless of whether you are taking a process that is defined or has some definition, an existing process that exists, like the EU trade agreement, which, by the way, let's just be really clear. I don't think either of us could say we're experts on or well read on. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to say,
God, no.
yeah, I'm just a Joe Blogs public member on what happened there.
No, 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 no. But I think as an example, it's quite interesting because, you know, the argument for did rely very heavily on data, and they sold that data.
Well, yeah, going back to like how you do it. The first thing you need to do if you're gonna like just optimize your day, for crying out loud. In fact, that's probably a really good example of people talk all the time about, doing tasks more efficiently, and they want, you see a good version of this and a bad version of this. So the bad version, you see someone who's like probably worked in digital marketing, but done a bit of digital. Maybe they've hired a VA once or whatever, and they start to say, "Oh, you want Zapier automations, and you want to integrate these databases and all these no-code tools," and they use all the buzzwords. Like, if you are automating shit, like if it is stuff that isn't worth doing, automating it, optimizing it doesn't suddenly make it worthwhile. Like that's the bad case. That's the worst case. Like if it's not a worthwhile thing, it will never be worthwhile, no matter how efficiently you do it. And this is, we can talk about value add and non-value add tasks, but don't automate stuff for the sake of it. The good version is someone who has like just a to-do list. Like, it's surprising how many people, when you open up their calendar, they'll have whatever problem in the business. We're not making enough sales. We don't know how to. We've got poor customer support. Revenue's not good enough. It's like, okay, we'll open up your calendar. Where are your sales calls? Like, they're just not in there. Like, do you even have a checklist for sales call? No. All right. Well, just get that straight. Like, so what I'm getting at with Brexit, for instance, is define the current state and just write down what exists currently. And I think clearly it was political and it was a media.
Obviously.
Yeah, there was a lot of media trend around it, and it was quoted. And there's fantastic. Well, we'll argue about whether they're fantastic or not, but there are Netflix documentaries about how one piece of data was paraded. There's a £300 million a year, month, God knows how, every month I think, going out. But on the other side of that, we got a lot of money from the EU. Innovate UK had, which is a funding source for innovation for doctors, scientists, business owners. I've worked on Innovate UK grants where it's like, hey, we've got a bit of a patent here on a tiny little bit of a sensor or whatever else. Let's turn that into a product that then gets sold to the tier one companies. So these are usually like tier two, tier three businesses that sell to tier one names, and I'm just going to say names, not to say disclose anything, but Rolls-Royce, Cement Group, energy companies like Siemens, those tier 3, tier 4 companies get these they only need a salary for a year, which is a small amount of money, to get these multi-million pound deals over the line. And it's that technology that gets fed in. And obviously I'm on the tech side and that's what I've seen. But what I'm getting at is we only looked at some of the data. And I always find this whenever I'm looking at any, I'm an engineer. I like to analyze the fact. Whenever I look at any government policy, I'm like, getting it done. What the F does getting it done actually mean? Like, oh, we've got a robust plan. No, you haven't, because a plan every kid that's done any project management or any qualification in school, any bit of training, knows a plan has to be smart. It must be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound. Like, this is fundamental basic stuff. And with regards to optimization, I think before we get into the sexy, like, how do we make decisions? How do we do it more efficiently? Can we automate it? Can we use tech? Like, what the hell is the current state? Like, just document that, and document it in a way that you could explain it down the pub to a builder. Some hairy ass guy who's had 2 pints. Like, if you can't explain it to him or can't explain it to his mum, you haven't got it clear. It's not articulated in terms that are clear enough. And I don't care whether you're at a senior level of government, whether you're an MD, whether you are a PhD, a doctor, whatever else. It doesn't matter. Explain it in clear terms that people can understand. That's step one in optimization. Get shit straight.
You've got to have a goal, as you put, right? There's got to be a reason behind it, a philosophy. I mean, in the project management world, we would have to write a project manifesto in order to bring in the stakeholders of our project, because if you got them to believe in the project, they were more likely to fulfill it on your behalf for you. That's the way businesses should be treating optimization as well. And, the example I've given there of Brexit, right, was just to have a bit of fun and talk about, I think the biggest business in the UK, which is the government, has looked at how the country's run and decided to try and optimize it, or at least sell that part of it. And, there's politics on the other side, without looking at the kind of bigger picture. And I think that it's so important to do in your business is when you're going to start any type of optimization. I mean, obvious optimizations, right, are like streamlining product lines, product services, right, or moving from in person or physical product to like virtual, right? But again, if you don't look at the bigger picture of like why you're doing it, if it's only just going to be for money and you're going to have a knock-on effect of other things, I think you have to take that into consideration. You have to be self-aware in your business. You have to be able to predict certain outcomes and then gamble on making those outcomes, like the decision in supermarkets to turn checkouts into self-service checkouts. That is an optimization outcome there, if ever there was one. That is data-led people looking at the numbers and going, actually, we have to pay 20 people to sit on a checkout every month. Could we just do it virtually, invest this amount in the machines, and then people can just check out themselves, right? And they'll be honest. We'll put cameras on them on the till so that they'll do this. And everyone hates them. Like, everyone hates them. But, it's an outcome, I think, that maybe supermarkets feel that people will put up with in order to get cheaper products, potentially. But, that is an example, definitely there, of a business that's optimized.
For sure. I wonder as well if the hate is a generational thing, because I tweeted about this, about if you want to explore new tech, explore it with a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old that just doesn't have any preconceived ideas and has grown up with tech. And I have this luxury. I have a son who is 4, and over the weekend I've flippantly said, "Oh, we should go see a film." And he went, "Yeah, Dad, where's your phone?" I'm thinking, "Where's my phone?" And he wants to watch it on the phone. What's he on about? So he got the phone. He opens it at 4 years old. He knows my passcode. He gets in. Major security risk, but whatever. And he flicks through. It's like, "Oh yeah, there's the View app." Clicks on it and books a film. Books the seat. Even says, "Where do we want to sit?" And I was watching this unfold in front of my eyes, thinking, obviously, my son can do no wrong, and I think he's the best son that will ever be born. But I was watching this thinking, he's figuring this out, and I wonder what else we can figure out. And I got a Stream Deck over the weekend for my birthday, and he was there like, well, why can't the Stream Deck control the TV? And I was thinking, oh Christ, yeah. So I guess what I'm getting at is, with an optimization, there is a huge element. Ultimately, if we are agreed that we're optimizing time and money, the multiplying factor of time is the person, what skill level they're at, what they're capable of. And I can totally see we are still young in terms of like working life and working experience, but I'm looking at my 4-year-old thinking, like hell, I'm going to be able to compete with him once he's figured out how to TikTok and stream and whatever else, because he doesn't care that once upon a time there was someone called Deirdre that sat on the checkout and took our groceries through. He just goes, "Dada, I want it. When's the man coming?" Like with anything, whether it's the Amazon person, sorry, he does say man, but because it usually is a man that comes to our door, but it's a person. I don't know that his gender identity. Let's not get into that.
No, Sam, in our house, we have the Amazon man, we have the washing man, because we use a washing service that picks our clothes up, delivers them back. The postman, I mean, occasionally there is a shopping lady, but that understanding of how the world works, that's not in my brain, that's not in my psyche, that you press a button and things are delivered to you. And like the case I think with optimizing for self-service checkouts is, well, machines are going to have to take over at some point. If they can do a better job, make quicker decisions, do all of those things. And actually, like, the downside of that in that point is going to be the collateral damage, if you like, of that is going to be slight older customer satisfaction.
Sure. So here's my thoughts on it. So like we've gone down a rabbit hole here of customer checkouts, but let's just follow the rabbit hole. I've been working a lot on computer vision lately, and I wonder how I've been looking for more cameras around the checkout, because I wonder if what those self-service checkouts are actually doing is creating a data set to train a machine learning model, so that we have enough pictures of these products in enough orientations, and confirming that that product is identified as the one that is put through the till, training this data set such that we will get to this place where we all want to be, which is you walk into the checkout, stick it all in your trolley, and walk out again, and you're just automatically billed. I say we all want to be like, that's the most optimized version of that experience. I wonder if they are doing that. I don't think they are, because I've been looking at the till systems and I know some people developing them. But yeah, I do wonder that would be the most optimized way of doing it. And maybe we should at some point have a segment about why this is important, or why businesses do it and why people have resistance to it as well.
I think the most optimized experience, just to like bookend this for that, is for me to not even pick my phone up, right? Is for me to say out loud, I'm running low on bread, and that's just picked up, and then I get bread delivered to me. I don't even want to go on the app and add 100 items to the app, or even reorder my last shop, because there's issues with that, right? Because I might still have the same thing in stock, right? I just want everything to know what I'm low on and give me the thing that I want, right?
There are smart fridges, aren't there, as well, to take it one step further. So you don't even have to say, but that would only be refrigerated items. But there is, because I've implemented it, an Alexa integration. So you tell Alexa what you want, and then you integrate that with a third-party tool, a spreadsheet, and then you automatically import that into your provider of choice, and then that comes in your shop. I do occasionally get some random stuff in the shop, I'm not going to lie, but very efficiently, the person of some gender delivers it, and if you don't want it, you just go, keep that please, and you get refunded. Like, so it is, from me, it's very efficient.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know how to set a skill up on Alexa, right? A lot of people don't know what skills are on Alexa. And I'm sorry if I've set anyone's Alexas off saying Alexa really loudly. But
Could be worse. You could be saying, hey, Google as well. Now we've done everyone. Hey, Siri. Who else can we piss
yeah,
off?
yeah. Gary Vee called this maybe about 3 years ago. He said, if you want to get into something that's hot and new, you'll create an Alexa skill and go all in on it. Where are they now? No, people aren't like falling over themselves to create skills at the moment.
No.
But anyway,
I spent a lot of time creating
mate.
one.
Bringing it back. So optimization. So just to recap really quickly. So optimization, improving your business for a goal that you set as a business, is probably going to be revenue based, right? Especially if you're in our world. It's not going to be for data's sake. It's not going to be led by software, even though we love chatting about the software. Sometimes you got to keep thinking about that goal. And it's also going to look broadly at the 20,000 foot view of your business to see if the things that you're doing to optimize and work towards that goal with the tests that you've set are actually worth doing or not. And we've kind of like thrown around some big ideas there, but ultimately I think that is what optimization is from my point of view.
It's the amount of profit for the amount of time. Like, that's the equation. Like, profit divided by time, and you just want that number to go up. And you just need a level that supports the lifestyle you want, and you have to spec the lifestyle you want. Like, that's a whole other topic. What the hell? If you're happy to work 100 hours a week, then cool. That's fine. If you want to work 1 hour a week or don't want to work at all, like that number needs to be zero, whatever profit number divided by zero.
Yeah. And so like obvious optimizations, we've talked about a few of them, like, streamlining product lines and services, moving from in-person or physical to virtual, even like looking at the interaction that you get with a particular product or a particular message that you put online and going all in on that. That's why quite often you'll see product businesses pivot, and they've put like one product out and then they've got a couple of other lines, and actually everyone loves the line. For example, like people love going to Harrods, especially from Italy, and going to buy the bags, right? Like the posh carrier bags. Like, that's like, I'm not sure that is keeping Harrods afloat here, right? But there is always there's always something else that's potentially got the ability to drive your business, and focusing on other product lines, other messaging, putting social posts out and seeing what posts people go for the most, and then going all in on that is a type of optimization as well. Improving supply chain, I mean, you know a lot more about that than me, and improving internal management. And ultimately, this always comes back to time and cash. You're absolutely right.
You can optimize these things and you can automate things, but there is always a cost benefit to doing it.
Big businesses, it's worth talking about really quickly, who've optimized based on how users have reacted to their products. Pinterest is one of them. Did you know this, Sam Jackson? That
No, I
Pinterest have
didn't. Go on.
pivoted from a network called Tote. It used to be called Tote, where people could browse and shop their favorite retailers and send them updates when their favorite items were available and on sale. Great product idea, right? But actually, what happened is that people who used Tote were interested in building collections of their favorite items and sharing them with their friends. And that's how Pinterest came about. So it never came about because someone was like, I've got a great idea. Why don't we let people pin images and share those boards with each other? It came out of like a very commercial need, a very commercial objective.
Talk me through it. So how did it work before Tote? Like, what's the value prop? Why would a business use it?
Well, I imagine all the retailers, like let's say high street retailers, Next and Topshop at the time and all of that, would agree to have their sites scraped, or even not agree, right? And all of those products were pulled into Tote, and then you could go into Tote and pull together a collection of products you really liked and then go and buy them, either from the retailer direct, probably not from Tote itself, but from the retailer direct. So either in person, depending on when this was, because it's got to be at least 10 plus years ago. And then actually what happened was people were creating collections and just sharing them with their mates and going, oh, I'd really like to buy this. Or probably at the time, we were talking 10 years ago, fashion blogging was the thing as well. That's a distant memory of internet past. But, people used to create blog posts and pull together items and then link all to those different retailers as a way of making their sites affiliate marketing viable, right? And then people just used it for something completely different.
Why do you class this as an optimization and not a pivot?
Well, it's definitely a pivot first. But the decision but pivot is a very Silicon Valley led term, right? And I think if you were looking at this from an optimization point of view and looking at your business and how people were using your products, you would be looking at the outcome and thinking, okay, well, we should change this based on how the users are interacting with the product. So it's a type of optimization for sure. Not doing anything would mean that no pivot would happen and the business would not become optimized. So I think they go hand in hand there.
Yeah, okay, yeah, fair point. So I think a pivot is a type of optimization. It's a change of direction to try and get success in a different another area, another
segment.
Yeah, okay. Not how I think of an optimization at all. Definitely they have optimized. Yeah, okay, I get this. I get where you're going with this. This is like a optimization of an outcome. But I think so. So where I am at with it is, I think of optimization like I'm trying to make a cup of tea, and currently it takes me 3 minutes to make a cup of tea. How do I do that in a minute? How do I get that outcome in a minute? But I guess what you're saying is there's a world where an optimization is, well, why are we making a cup of tea if we want a coffee? Like, that's fundamentally just wrong. And I get that. Okay. Oh, if no one's buying cups of tea, let's sell coffee. Like, that's what you're saying. So yeah, okay, I can get on board with that. I don't have a framework in my head for that.
Well, I think it's optimization that it is kind of biggest really. Whereas at the moment, then if we kind of look at Instagram, which by the way was a pivot as well as I discovered today. I didn't know this. I didn't know Instagram started out as bourbon.
Ticketing platform, wasn't it?
It was, you could check in, post photos, get points, loads of stuff, and then they removed everything and just had the photo sharing. At the moment, what Instagram is doing as an app is definitely optimizing. It's looking at the market and bringing in new features depending on where they feel they can get the most attention right now, which is the inclusion of video and reels more than before. It's not a pivot. It's still the same app. It's still treating the same market. It's still more or less visual. It's just moving visuals, not still visuals. And they are optimizing the experience, maybe at the detriment of what the consumer wants, a bit like our self checkout example from a bit earlier, based on the competition, like the looking at the landscape and seeing what's out there, where the attention's going. And so, and I think that that's quite a famous in view example of a kind of what's going on in the software optimization world at the moment. Same with Facebook / Meta moving into the metaverse. That is slow. That is glacial in terms of their move into that world, and we can see that going millimeter by millimeter, right? Not even inch by inch. But again, it's based on trends, how people are responding to tech, some predictions about what will happen in the future.
Yeah, so I'm having a lot of big feelings as you're saying all about what these tech companies are doing and are not doing. So let me just break this down a little bit. So first up, I put those tech companies, and that's how they are considered, as media companies, which I think is more accurate, and probably other people would also call them media companies. And what's really interesting, at least to me, is that's the most efficient way of making money, is if you can get people's attention by whatever means, you can make money. Like, that's the biggest problem. A lot of the fear of getting started as an entrepreneur and doing marketing and advertising is, oh shit, what if everyone sees this and it's not good? Like, if everyone sees it, you ain't got a problem. Like, there is no problem there, because you're going to get the same ratio of rejection as you do acceptance, demand, and you just want the biggest number to see that. And obviously you want to optimize that ratio of people that want it and don't want it. That's why my call after this podcast is about setting up a media company. Like, it's not my core domain, but I think that's the most efficient business you can own. And then that's why I think newsletter businesses are really interesting, because the barrier to entry is really low, and why content creation and all that's interesting. But I just want to circle back to something, the feature that you spoke about, and the features being introduced in Instagram, Facebook, and a lot of the apps, even YouTube. Like, they're made by engineers, and engineers have figured this out. Like, oh, we put a bit of catnip there and we get the response we want. And that's really good for our optimization, which is we want the most attention for the money. Attention equals dollars, like money, or pounds, whatever currency they're trading in.
More eyes on ads, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess we're into this new world now, which we're seeing being regulated. And I'm not sure whether I'm for or against regulation of tech. I think probably it's inevitable. Not sure whether it's a good thing or not. I think it needs to be done very carefully, in the same way it is done in pharma and medicine. And the reason I say this, and in food, the reason I say this is I would wager that if we look at the patterns of the big food manufacturers, I'm just going to call out Coca-Cola, and some of the ingredients that were in Coca-Cola in the early days, so sugar, clearly addictive, caffeine, clearly addictive. Weren't there some class A drugs in there once upon a time? Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. Maybe edit this out because I don't want us to get sued. But point is, like, if you can start giving people some powerful drugs, dopamine, or you wouldn't say it's okay to put a bit of heroin or cocaine in those sweets to sell more sweets, although that's the thing you're trying to optimize for. That's clearly happening on social media. And the reason I'm highlighting that is not to say that it's a bad thing. Like, it's everyone's decision to be on there. And I do believe that the virtual world has a lot of benefits, and I'm in most cases for it. I just want to call out how powerful that optimization is, that people are now willing to take on a worse experience because they get some hit, kind of like a junkie. Like, people know that drugs are bad for them, but they're addictive because you get that ROI. So let's just say all optimization isn't good. I'd make that statement.
Okay, and I think that's a really good thing to pull up, because you need to think sometimes about the ethics of optimization. So, for example, right, if you were looking at the spreadsheet and saying, okay, well, look, if we slash the workforce 30% this year, then we're going to save more money. So the business will be fine, the shareholders will be fine. But what you're doing is removing the salary of potentially thousands of people, right? There's some ethics there, right? It's the same with, do you get people addicted to your app? By the way, that's been happening in business since time immemorial, because you know you bring in sexualized images into your advertising, or you create any type of like Pavlov's dog thing in a business. Like, people are people are going to sign up. It's not necessarily social media invented it, I don't think. But yeah, there's definitely some ethical considerations when it comes to optimization in business as well.
I think the important thing probably to highlight is where we started was there's this quite dry, analytical, engineering, math, science approach to, I'm going to say, the engineering of optimization. I think it's definitely very tightly coupled to engineering. Certainly, my background's engineering. That's where my experience lives, in Toyota Principle, Sigma, blah blah blah. And I know yours is as well. Like, we get this agile world, but there is the other side of the coin. It's a creative pursuit. There's philosophy in there. There's politics in there, and I mean,
Psychology.
psychology big time. And one day we should dive into how Cambridge Analytica pulled off what they pulled off. Optimization to the max for a terrible cause. And I guess there's probably a whole episode of, let's do the devil and the angel of optimization. We can look at. It's also been great for the COVID vaccine, so long as you believe the science and know that a COVID vaccine is a good thing.
So yeah, I agree. I think there is we've definitely started out on the kind of the dry front of what is optimization, but hopefully, like, after listening to this, that people will feel as excited about optimization as we are. The way I look at optimization when I'm doing consulting in businesses, when I'm doing the marketing that I do, is, wow, what tests can I do today? What can I create out of the information I've got to hand to make better decisions for this business, make the better decisions for my own businesses? And that's why I love what I do, because I basically get to dick around having fun doing tests for businesses all day, every day.
I think that's awesome. There isn't, not yet anyway, a business operation system where you can have that operational control center, kind of like a NASA for your business, although it's just you and a lot of monitors, where you can sit down and go, oh yeah, there's all the leads, and this is the conversion rate, and this is how many emails I got sent, and there's the revenue, and this is how long it takes me to deliver that product, and here's the number of support queries, and oh, there's the bank balance, and our insurance isn't due for 6 months. And not that I've been designing such a thing, but I think that definitely doesn't exist. For me, there's an article I've got in front of me here, and I'm going to credit the author. It's behind a paywall, unfortunately, inside of Trends. It was written last year by Ethan Brooks. If you want to find him on Twitter, @DamnEthan. I'm just going to give him credit. I can reference this even though it's behind a paywall. And he did a great job of, I gave him, I think, about 7 hours of interview in the end, to break down, like, basically the consulting process for optimizing a business, for writing, a business playbook, because a lot of businesses don't have these, especially the bootstrapped. Why would you, if it's you and maybe one other person? But when you want, as we've discussed, like, to go to more than that, remove yourself from the business, sell the business, make 7 figures, yada yada yada, you kind of need this. And I found this really useful that he wrote. I'm just going to give you the headlines. So, step 1, you want to start by mapping an as-is process. And that's all the stuff that got very animated about at the very beginning. Like, what are the physical steps you need to do to complete a process? How are they triggered? How many people are involved? What's the capacity? How long do they each take? Just write them down in a spreadsheet, in a doc. You can start to consider, like, cycle time and touch time and all this kind of stuff. Once you have done that, then you can identify the waste. And I think going back to Vicky's point, like that could be like people don't want cups of tea, they want coffee. Like it could be at the macro level, or it can be at the bits and bytes level where my head goes to, if I'm honest, which is that you end up with this process map with all of these tasks in there, and you can start to identify, the sequence of them, what all the inputs and outputs are. And usually at this point, people are like, oh, yeah, do you know, I could just copy the email that I write every single time about this topic, or I could create a template or a checklist. But in doing that, you will identify the different types of waste. There's a really boring acronym, TIM Wood. Transport, inventory, motion, waiting time, overproduction, overprocessing, defects. Like these are all issues, types of waste you can identify. The easiest one, I think the most important one for the sort of size of business that we are talking about is time. Like, where are you just waiting for someone to do a thing? Could you just phone them and get the answer? Could you not have to take a phone call, not sit in a meeting? Like, just look at how you're spending your 40 hours. Then step 3 is to redesign that system. So once you've identified all the messing around that you do, remove that, redesign the new checklist. He breaks it down into 3 steps. So that's as far as he goes. So implementation is the next step. Yeah, bit dry to finish off, I guess, on that, but I think it's quite important.
So I don't think, what was that acronym? Tim Wood. I just have this feeling.
Tim Wood.
I just have this feeling they didn't consult.
Nobody's going to ever do.
Tim Wood was not consulted when the Brexit project was happening. I just have this feeling that Tim Wood was not.
Can I give a tidbit on the Brexit thing, which blew me away? So I'm going to say that I at least had some nice thoughts about Boris Johnson, our former Prime Minister, officially as of this morning. Now he's been and visited Liz in her Scottish residence. He wrote a book on Churchill, and Churchill, one of the most revered leaders of our time, I think probably recalled with a nice shiny recollection because he did some great stuff, did some really bad stuff too because he was a human. In Bojo's autobiography on Churchill, he calls out that Churchill identified that we needed this United States of Europe because he'd been so impressed by what he'd seen in America with their United States. Now, it's quite difficult because obviously Churchill had American heritage. I think it was his mother that was American. It's quite difficult to know how much of this was he realised that World War II wasn't going to be won without the intervention of the United States, and how much of this was cozying up. But he did quite clearly outline what the United States of Europe would look like. He said Britain at the time had the empire, had a serious position in the world, was a world power, still are not as strong, and there's a lot of independence happened since then. And we also had this relationship with Europe and America. So he identified that England would have, I'm going to call it this optimised position as, yes, a member state of Europe, but with a more significant preferable terms, because that made sense. And what actually happened, according to Bojo's autobiography, was that France and maybe Germany, the new leader, can't remember, it doesn't matter, but 2 of the European leaders quickly, before Churchill could physically attend after the VE Day, said, right, well, we're going to form the European Union. That all happened with the exclusion of Britain, which is why we didn't enter in until whenever it was under the Blair administration. So knowing all this, and Bojo having quite clearly researched it and got into it, it blows my mind that he feathered his political nest and pulled us out rather than putting things right because he knew how it should have been done.
Yeah, but he was optimizing his political career, you see. So looking at
his time and money.
Yeah, indeed. So all right, so I feel like that was a kind of a good journey through our understanding of what optimization is. I mean, there's so much more we can dive into, as you were saying, like, okay, it was It's all very well talking about what optimization is. I get it, but where do I start? What do I do? How do I approach it? Where is it meaningful? And there's so much more that we're going to talk about on this subject, and bring in more case studies. And yeah, and I love the idea about doing the good and the bad side of it as well.
Hey, it's Sam Jax. That's SAMJAXX. You can find me on Twitter. What we discussed today went all over the place. We discussed the fundamentals of optimization, how to F it up royally, how it can work well, and some cases of optimization that you just wouldn't expect in big businesses and small. And most importantly, we start to explain how you can apply it in your business.
Hi, it's Vicky Jakes. You can find me, Hey Vicky Jakes, on Twitter and all over the internet. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to like this video and subscribe, and we'll give you more of this content in the future.
We would absolutely love your feedback. We have a whole section to do on the feedback we've had from just one episode, and we have implemented it straight away. So thank you. Your feedback means the world. Please comment, like, subscribe, and we will respond. For anyone that does get involved, we've got something a little bit special for you. We will get in touch with you.